Today's FTD Satellite Applications webinar, thank you for joining, is being presented by Melissa Beat from the Forecast Office in Amarillo. She's been a forecaster in Amarillo for 7 years. Prior to that, she was a SEP for WFO in Houston. In her current position, she is the aviation, social media, and intranet focal points for the office, and she has 2 ongoing research projects. One is a joint project with neighboring offices that reviews northwest flow cases in the Southern Plains to determine if a pattern exists for forecasting specific severe weather elements during specific times of the year with those northwest flow cases. The other research project is reviewing statistics of Facebook Live usage and how it can aid decision support operations. This work has been presented at recent conferences, that is the NWA in 2021 and the Texas Weather Conference in 2022. Today's presentation is on fires over the Southern Plains on April 5 through 7, 2022. Next slide, please. This is part of an ongoing Forecast Decision Training Division satellite chat. There's a library for that, and it is available online at the URL that's listed in the blue box. My name's Scott Lindstrom, and Dan Bykos and I collaborate this particular satellite chat series. We're always looking for speakers. Let us know if you want to speak on a topic. Let us know if you want to volunteer someone else to speak on a topic. We can help you with image creation if that's needed. But mostly we want to hear how you've been using satellite imagery in your forecast office. Next slide, please. We'll have about 20 minutes for the speaker. You can send questions via the GoToChat, or you can ask during the Q&A after Melissa is finished. We should be done by 1830 UTC. Don't press hold. Mute when not speaking. Take it away, Melissa.
All right, thanks, Scott, for that introduction. And like you said, we're going to be talking about some fires that happened across the Southern Plains towards the beginning of April on the 5th through the 7th. So first of all, let's kind of define how fires work for those that are a little less familiar out there. Most of the fires are initial attack or large fires, and generally categorized by just a few hundred acres. Once you get to larger fires, they start becoming called significant wildfires if you've got more than 5,000 acres burned. And then beyond that, when you start having multiple fires with tens of thousands of acres, that's what we call here on the plains a Southern Great Plains wildfire outbreak. And then when you get even more fires, they're burning hundreds of thousands of acres. Those are known as firestorms. And then if you have one particularly very large fire that's burning hundreds of thousands of acres, it's a mega fire. And lots of things go into determining this. It's not just about the size. It's really kind of, how hard is it to control that fire, and things that can be a little bit difficult to quantify. So in the plains, we do have a typical pattern setup for figuring out if we're expecting an outbreak scenario. And this generally involves a pattern of aligning your jets and stacking them up, having low RH, having a dry line in place, most likely if you're going to have that low RH. You'll be looking at the low-level thermal ridge somewhere in the area, so you've got high temperatures. And then typically you'll end up with a surface low so that you'll get a cold front coming through the area so that you burn the area in 2 ways, 2 directions. So you'll have, your surface winds first will be going out of like the west or the southwest to burn towards the east. And then once that cold front comes through and turns the winds to the north, then you start burning towards the south. And so typically, to find where you're going to see the greatest risk for wildfires is looking at that low-level thermal ridge and looking at the windward side of it to find that greatest risk area. So looking at April 5th, here's kind of the synoptic setup. And so the 6th and 7th, the synoptic setup is pretty well similar. So we can just kind of look at this one. And so looking across the Southern Plains area, you've got some difluence here aloft. And so really you're not having much of your jet overhead. By the time you get to 700 millibars, you can start to see a little bit of a lee side trough starting to develop. And again, still looking for some difluence in the area, so no real jet there to help out. By 8:50, you can see that there's kind of a broad area for your low-level thermal ridge area, so it's very wide. And you can see that kind of lee side trough even more so. And then by the time you get to the surface, you can see that our winds are kind of southwesterly. We do see a surface low up in South Dakota and a cold front extending down into Colorado. And so we'll see that through the day march southeastward, and so the low will bring that cold front into the area later on the 5th. So really, there's not a setup for a Great Plains outbreak, and we do have a group here that is comprised of Weather Service as well as fire behaviorist experts that is known as our Southern Great Plains Outbreak Group, and they kind of put out these outlooks for our area. And so on the 5th, we were expecting just kind of like a 30% risk of significant wildfires. As you can see, they weren't really expecting that outbreak to happen, and most of it would be initial attack type of activity. So when we were watching, we typically at our office, we have procedures for watching satellite for hotspots and things, because we have what's called the hotspot notification tool. And so what that is, if you're unfamiliar with it, is a AWIPS tool that you can, for people who have signed up, so emergency managers, firefighters and such, they can sign up and say, hey, if there is a fire in this county or this particular area, I'd like to be notified, and they'll get a text message about that if we see something, so that they're ready to respond. And so we're watching satellite, we're watching, looking at the mid-level water vapor, which is band 9 here. And so you can see the cold front marching down through the area through the day on the 5th. And that is important if you've got, fires ongoing, because it will turn the winds, and you need to let the firefighters know about that so they can get out of the way. And we actually had to happen to have a fire up here in the Oklahoma Panhandle. So we're going to zoom into this particular area, and this fire is ongoing. And you can see this is the meso sector that's over us. And so you can see the cold front here marching southward. And I've got the 3.9 micron here, as well as derived firepower. And so we can watch that it was kind of blowing off to our east with the winds. And then as that front comes through, you can see it slowly expand towards the south down the highway area. And so we did put out a notification ahead of time, as we first started seeing the fire light up on 3.9, we notified them that, hey, there's a possible wildfire here. And then as this front was coming through, and we could time out the front with our tools on AWIPS. So we could notify them that, hey, in 30 minutes or an hour, the front will be to your fire site. So get people off that southern flank, because the winds were going to change. So lots of good DSS went on that day to help with the mission. And here's just another kind of look at it where you can see it in the visible. This is band 1, so this is blue channel. And you can see the cold front here marching down through into Oklahoma right here. You can see the smoke plume kind of going off to the east. And then as that front hits it, it turns towards the south. I'll let that finish playing through here one more time. You can really see, like right there, it hits it and it starts moving south. So the smoke starts going southward. And here's a look at the surface. So one of our fire partners up there fighting the fire, they took this picture. We also happen to have a meteorologist from our office who was out in this particular area. And we developed a nice pyro cue out of this fire that was up in Oklahoma Panhandle. Along with that cold front did come a wall of dust. So we had a nice haboob that people across the area started getting pictures of. This is one of those examples. And so we were very aware of dust causing lower visibilities that day. And that kind of played into some of the stuff on the next couple of days that I'll show you here in just a few seconds. So across the April 5th, we ended up with like 16 wildfires across the area, Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas area. It didn't burn more than 10,000 acres at that particular time in that day time frame. So definitely not an outbreak by the size of things, because things were kind of more easily controlled, but several wildfires that all needed some DSS action taken in order to help save our partners. So when we look at the 6th and 7th, Again, so now, similar synoptic setups, but the cold front's gone through. So we were looking at kind of that northerly flow, a little bit cooler days. And so, again, we're looking at only about 30% risk of kind of a significant wildfire happening. And so we were, again, aware of, the possibilities of dust since we'd seen it the day before. And so we started doing some DSS to the public and our partners on what kinds of things we were seeing on satellite. And so this is a snapshot of the dust RGB on GO17, I believe. And so trying to highlight to the public, hey, if we're watching this, pink area here, and it's going to be moving into our area, and you guys need to be, slow down, protect yourself if you're outdoors. And here's just a quick loop of it, and you can see how much and how thick that dust was probably light coming through the area based on how that looked. On the 7th, we were watching hotspots again, and we noticed that, so we're still in northerly flow, so the winds are pushing things south, and yet we saw this spot develop, and it was moving north. So that was an interesting one to tell our partners about, that it was moving into Kansas, which is a little abnormal. And so this was, again, using the 3.9 micron satellite look. And so we did some DSS for that as well, telling public and partners, hey, we've got a lot of little small fires. We took a snapshot of visible, I think this one might be red visible, channel 2 for this snapshot, and letting them know that, hey, you're probably going to see some smoke that may reduce visibility along that highway, since it was right along that highway that goes into Kansas. And typically when we see something like that goes against the wind direction that you're expecting for fire spread, it typically ends up being a chain dragger. So we tried to, really kind of put that out there that, DSS wise, guys, remember, don't do this. And we found out either the next day or the day after that what happened is this guy was driving along the highway and was having some car troubles, and would end up, kind of pulling over the side, and then, his car would start working again. And so he'd start going, pull off to the side again, it wouldn't stop. And so it was just multiple little fires got started that way. And so it ended up, here's a snapshot of how much kind of acreage burned that day along the Oklahoma and Kansas area. But we did have, several fires. We had that one, the one that was still ongoing from the day before on the 5th that I showed you was still burning. And then we had a couple more pop up. So, a few more acres on the 6th and 7th were burning. And so total over the 3 days, we ended up seeing over 50,000 acres burned in the Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma Panhandle, and southern Kansas. And there was definitely more than that because I don't have a snapshot of it, but there were more fires off in Oklahoma that were happening, several large ones as well. And so there was even more than that got burned over that 3-day period. Because it took place over 3 days, then that's not considered an outbreak, since outbreaks are basically considered based on 1-day totals. And so we did a lot of satellite monitoring and provided a lot of great IDSS for our partners as well as the public to help them take some life-saving actions during this 3 days. And so that is what I wanted to share with you guys today on what kind of satellite we were using during that particular time frame. So appreciate you all for listening today. And if you have any questions, I'm here for them.
Thanks, Melissa. I actually have a question that, I don't work in a forecast office. I don't know how the staffing is with COVID, but on the 5th, when you had those 16 different fires, is it just one person working the fire desk in the office, or do you call people from home to have them monitor? How exactly does that work?
Typically, yes. We only end up with one person working the fire desk. So they'll be strictly kind of monitoring for hotspots, putting out those notifications on the hotspot notification tool, as well as possibly taking any actual hotspot requests that come in through the spot forecast page. So they'll be taking care of those elements. And then if they need extra support, they can typically grab one of the other forecast shifters that are on.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if there are any other questions. I was a little surprised about I never heard of chain dragging, um, or hearing a guy's car keeps breaking down and he's having a fire spread north. Because I was really curious, how can this fire be spreading northward against the flow? But I guess
Yeah.
if someone, when you know the roads there, I guess that has to be, you think about it, I guess that's the only way it can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely interesting watching, and the chat group that was happening, watching all of this, between us and the fire experts and stuff who are part of that Southern Great Plains Outbreak group. We're all in a Google Meet on days like that, talking about what we're seeing, what fires were happening, so that we've got good communication. If like there was a fire warning that needed to go out on the 5th because of that spread southward. And so we were letting them know what we were seeing. They were letting us know, hey, this partner needs a fire warning to go out. And so we were doing DSS even through that manner as well, through that Google chat. And yeah, we were all chatting about the day that the fire is going north. It's like, oh, either we've got a pyro or we've got something going on with a car, especially since it's along a highway. We'll go with it's a car.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. I see a comment to say thank you for this presentation, which I will echo. Okay, I see a question. Jorel asks, do you have any, when you're working the fire desk, there is JPSS data, so you showed mostly GOES data. How often do you use JPSS data on the fire desk?
We typically don't. Most of the time when we're on the fire desk, we're strictly looking mostly at 3.9, watching for hot spots. And when we get those mesosectors over us, that's gold mine, because that stuff shows up so quickly then. We'll pop back and forth between things like fire temperature, derived firepower, and then the dust RGB to see, if there's any visibility things that are happening with that. Go back and forth with that, and the visible satellite to see about smoke, where that's going, because we'll get phone calls. The night of the 5th, we got phone calls in Amarillo from a lot of people thinking there was fire here because they were smelling smoke. And so it's like, nope, look, okay, we don't have any fires on satellite, nothing's there. It is simply watching that smoke plume come down from Oklahoma Panhandle clear down here. So we had to help, the public rest assured that there wasn't a fire nearby. And that's all just mostly looking at that GOES 16-17 data.
Did you call the meso here, or was it called by someone else?
Did I call what?
Did you call the meso? I mean, I saw the 1-minute imagery. Did the forecast office in Amarillo request the meso? Was this a red flag day, or was there, do you know?
Yeah, there were red flags all over the area, and so I think they were already pre-set up ahead of time. I don't think we had to call for them. We would have had they not already been over us to make that request, but they were already in place, because especially I think on the 7th, I've got an image of just how many red flags there were, and it was clear from central Kansas all the way down through, I want to say almost down through Brownsville at times, particularly I think on the 7th, we were like that, where it was a giant area that needed extra support for fire weather.
Right. Okay. I have no further questions. I don't see any more in the questions box. Has anyone raised their hand? Different ways to get people to talk. But sometimes everyone's shy. So I don't see anything further. So I'm just gonna give everyone 10 extra minutes. And I thank you very much, Melissa, for this interesting presentation. It will be available online later today. So if you know someone in an office who was unavailable to hear this, you can forward them the recording.
Thanks a lot, Scott. Appreciate you today.